Hey guys, welcome to Wrestling Daze and welcome to this uncomfortable and unplanned video. This is to do with Ashley Massaro and the rape allegations. So I feel like before we get to the thumbnail, the title, I need to bring you up to speed. So Ashley Massaro, of course, sadly no longer with us. She took her own life a few years ago. She was part of the WWE roster. They went over to Kuwait for a tribute to the troops, entertaining the troops type show. And over there, she alleges that she was raped, she was sodomized, and this obviously had a horrific effect on the rest of her life. Actually, Cara, in this interview, a friend of Ashley's, says that she is 99% certain that Ashley took her own life because of what happened here and what we're going to discuss. So this is an interview. So that's the backstory. Very, very quick overview, of course. But that's the backstory to what Ashley alleged happened in Kuwait. This is an interview with Ashley's friend Cara. This dropped about 20 hours ago by the looks of it. I was not aware of this, and I don't think the wrestling world is aware of this, but it is actually starting to get noticed. Tweets are starting to reference this interview, and you lot are now tagging me in those tweets. So that's how this has come onto my radar. This is News Nation, and they have done this interview with Cara, friend of Ashley, and they've really kind of gone through the timeline of what happened, and there's a few details in this interview that we were not aware of before, the big one being the thumbnail and the title, right? Which is that Stephanie McMahon knew about this, was involved in this, right? She was involved in the board meeting. So that's a shock, because up until this point, this is what we were aware of. So what I'm about to show you, this is Ashley's own words, and it's from a 2016 lawsuit to do with concussions, right? WWE were being sued for concussions and not protecting wrestlers. Part of that suit involved Ashley revealing what she alleged had happened to her, right? And so we get quite a bit of detail. There's quite a few pages to this. You can actually find her whole affidavits on Reddit, right? That's where I've got this from. So the bit we're looking at is Dr. Rios informed Vince, who informed Kevin Dunn, John Laurinaitis, and several other company executives or lawyers that I had never even met, but were all present at a meeting that I was called into shortly after. Vince led the meeting with these men and asked me to recount what happened in Kuwait. Then he said it was not in the best interest for the WWE for me to make the information about my attack public. I was still completely traumatized at that point, and I just agreed. It was clear that there had already been a conversation and that they had reached a decision on their own prior to consulting with me, as this was not a debate, but rather Vince instructing me to keep this confidential. Vince did at least apologize for what I went through, but then stressed if I disclosed this incident, it would ruin the relationship between the WWE and the US military. He told me not to let one bad experience ruin the good work they were doing. His lack of sensitivity in referring to my ordeal as one bad experience left me speechless. Vince went on to say that I would not be required to travel to the Middle East ever again, and that WWE would institute a new policy where anytime a female WWE performer went to the Middle East, she would have a female WWE escort with her 24/7 to ensure this did not happen again. Now, the reason why I read that out for you is because that's the only insight I've ever seen into what happened at that meeting. So Ashley came back from Kuwait and she says that's the meeting that took place. Apparently she had spoken to Vince before that as well. But the meeting was sort of the official, this is what we're going to do, right? It was sort of these are the next steps, and clearly there were no next steps apart from WWE saying, let's not let this one bad experience ruin our relationship with the US military, and also women will have an escort 24/7 in the Middle East, right? Which I would be very interested to know if that is still in place to this day. But the reason why I read that as well is because at no point there does it mention Steph. So it does make it very difficult to know if Steph was in that room, because Ashley doesn't mention Steph, but she may not have felt the need to have separated Steph. She does say that there were several other company executives or lawyers that were in that meeting, but they're not named, right? So we didn't get them named. One of those could have been Steph. She does continue to say that Vince led this meeting with these men and asked me to recount what happened in Q8. So again, she does say that the meeting is full of this meeting with these men. She doesn't mention a woman being in there. I don't want to be too nitpicky though. You know, this is a statement from 2016, and just because she hasn't mentioned Steph like by name in there, I don't know if that is confirmation that Steph wasn't in that meeting, or if she just was kind of grouped in with the company executives, right? But it's very, very clear what Cara is saying, right? Let's make no mistake about what Cara is. She is saying Steph was in that room. She was in that room, right? She says that Steph was involved because Vince wanted Ashley to feel comfortable and safe, and that when they went into the boardroom and Steph was in that boardroom, it was quite clear that Ashley was on her own. She felt threatened. She said there was no compassion for Ashley, and there was no sympathy for Ashley either. So it's a gray area, of course, right? It's a gray area. These are allegations. All we can do is present information, right? And it's up to people to make up their own minds as to who knew what action was taken, if it was the right action. But I think if Steph was in that room, that is going to be quite shocking for people, because I certainly wasn't aware that she had been in that room. And you would hope that someone like Steph, with the relationship that she's got with her dad, that being her dad, you would hope that she would be able to stand up and say, this is not right, and ring the alarm. No one sounded the alarm for Ashley. No, you know, this was quite clearly contained, controlled, managed, restricted. You know, it wasn't dealt with and investigated the way that it should have been. And you would like to think that someone would have rung the alarm. So for Steph to have been involved in that process, allegedly involved in that process, and not rung an alarm, not sounded the alarm, not stood up for Ashley, that is a really, really bad reflection on Steph. But again, it's an allegation. That's why the thumbnail says allegation, right? That's why the title says allegation. It's why I've shown you what Ashley said in the past as well, so that we've got the full picture, or as full a picture as what we can manage, obviously with Ashley no longer with us. I don't know that this will gain traction and that Steph will speak on this topic, but just absolutely horrific. I think what I'll do is I will put a link to the pages to this, because I do remember seeing this in the past, but obviously, you know, it's one of those where other news comes along and, you know, other stories come along. So actually going back and rereading this as a refresh, it's very detailed. It's very, very detailed. It's horrific. But I think if you really want to understand the Ashley Massaro allegations and story, I think this is a must read. So I will put that down in the description. So if you want to watch, I'll put a link to that, and I'll also put a link to this interview so you can see what Cara said in her own words. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the fact she said that Soma was being prescribed a lot. Now, I don't know what Soma is, but apparently at this time, this was a muscle relaxant, and I think she might be referring to cortisone, right? And so Soma might just be short for that. But apparently, and it does get mentioned in this 2016 document as well, apparently that is something that was being prescribed quite a bit. It's a muscle relaxant, it eases pain, and it just helps wrestlers get through because there's a lot of injuries and the show must go on. And apparently this was something that Ashley was being prescribed a lot. So Cara here says that she thinks that Ashley might not have been in the right state of mind because of Soma and cortisone and, you know, what was being prescribed at the time. If you actually read this 2016 document, though, Ashley's very clear in saying that she was also had something else put into an IV that sort of paralyzed her. So we don't obviously know what that was, but she obviously alleges that she was raped, she was sodomized, and she was not in control of her body. And she says that something was put into an IV before this incident took place. It's horrific, it's terrifying, it's horrifying. But I think if you really want to understand this story, it's a must read. So I will put that in the description. I will put a link to this in the description. And I just wanted to bring you up to speed with this story and situation, which honestly may gain some traction. I mean, I am starting to get tagged in this more and more and more. And as we said, if Steph is involved, it's a really, really bad look for her. A really bad look. But at this stage, allegations. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Bye for now.